Hey everyone, I'm Mnar Muhawesh for MintPress News' Behind the Headline. Ronald Reagan's war on drugs demonized marijuana use in the 1980s, but that legacy is dying, and medicinal cannabis is now at the center of a much-needed national dialogue about health, healing, and drug law reform. 23 states currently have approved cannabis for medicinal use, yet some restrictive state laws make it even more difficult for patients with autoimmune diseases to access the most powerful form of this medicine, CBD-rich, pure cannabis oil. Now, despite the legalization movement's progress, the federal government continues to classify cannabis as a Schedule I drug, the same category as heroin and bath salts. Yet research shows that cannabinoids can help treat the effects of a number of illnesses ranging from epileptic seizures to Crohn's disease to nausea brought on by chemotherapy. And CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta and the Department of Health's own National Cancer Institute have both acknowledged that research shows cannabis can be effective in fighting cancer. Now, whether it is chemotherapy or CBD oil, no treatment will work the same way for every individual. But shouldn't the gravely ill have the freedom to choose what medicine they use? Considering the potential for cannabis to harbor medicinal powers that might work where pharmaceuticals have failed, why isn't the government doing more to investigate cannabis-based therapies? And why isn't Big Pharma rejoicing at the rediscovery of a plant that could alleviate so much suffering and death? Well, Rick Simpson, a medicinal cannabis activist and founder of Phoenix Tears, has become one of the world's most vocal advocates for repealing all medical marijuana laws and is at the center of several documentaries about cannabis. Simpson's organization, Phoenix Tears, is a service that actually gives away CBD oil. They offer extraction and production instructions to use to heal your body from minor cuts and burns to cancer. He argues that people should have the right to choose between man-made chemical pharmaceuticals and a plant that has been used throughout history to heal. Now, religious figures like Jesus Christ, Moses, and even Imam Ali Riza are all said to have harnessed the healing powers of cannabis. Take a look. So Rick Simpson, thank you so much for joining me today. My first question is directed towards the pharmaceutical industry specifically. What role do you think that the pharmaceutical industry plays in our understanding of the healing power of medicinal cannabis? I mean, you've actually tried to share your work and findings with the medical field, only to have the door shut in your face. Where is this opposition to this research coming from, and why?
Well, I mean, it's the big money interests that own the pharmaceutical industry and practically everything else is causing this. I mean, they're the ones that caused it right from the beginning. If you go and look at the Corbett report, episode 286, you'll find that it's called Rockefeller Medicine. If you watch that report, I think it'll explain why we have this horrible medical system we have today. And I look at the pharmaceutical industry as being nothing more than gangsters. I mean, they've been killing us with chemicals and poisons, radiation, chemotherapy, and all of their wonderful CAT scans and PET scans. These are all harmful, and they have caused the death of many people. So I just am truly disgusted, with the practice of medicine today. And I think it's just about time that doctors got back to reality and started using, natural substances like this, the extracts from the cannabis plant, and then they could at least follow their Hippocratic oath, which states, first do no harm, and I shall not administer poisons. So I think it's time that the doctors of today started following that sacred oath.
What does the research that has been conducted on cannabinoids show in its effect on everything from cancer to MS to epilepsy? And does this research prove what you had seen medical cannabis do to people around you? I know that you've healed yourself. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, the research that's available today is definitely proving everything I've been saying about this. But I mean, if you go on YouTube, you'll see hundreds and hundreds, of different testimonials up there from people who were suffering from all kinds of different conditions. But yet, the authorities ignore this. I mean, these people have medical records proving that they did have these illnesses. So where have these illnesses gone? And how were they cured? Could it be that the extract that they said they used? It's just ridiculous the way this is being approached. And I think, definitely there's more research to be done, but we need some legitimate research. There's so much of these research projects that were conducted were done so, were funded by the pharmaceutical industry, and they gave them the results that they wanted. It's just a pack of lies, for God's sakes. And so it's got to the point that we have to wonder who we can put our trust in. It's a known fact since about 1975, the American government, after they shut down the Medical School of Virginia study, they've been withholding the simple truth about the healing powers, of these cannabinoids from the public for over 40 years now. And sadly, all of these researchers we have today, and there are many who I consider to be experts, but the problem is, they couldn't come forward and bring the public the truth. Because if they had tried to do so, they would have been ostracized and their careers would have been ruined. The big money is famous for doing that. But when it comes to someone like me, they couldn't threaten me by saying they were going to take my children, because my children are all grown up. And the bottom line is, this oil saved my life. And I will never stop speaking the truth about, what I've seen it do. It literally is a cure-all. I used to mix different oils or different extracts from many different strains, like the heavy sedated indica varieties. That's what you really need to produce the medicine properly. And when you mix all of these different extracts, well, each strain, they all have different healing abilities. So when you mix the extracts from many strains, you're basically creating a cure-all. And I really think that there is no medicine on earth like this, because you can take this medicine to prevent disease, you can take the medicine to fight disease also. And our bodies are designed. We have an endocannabinoid system with CB1 and CB2 receptors. Our bodies are designed to take this medicine. So how dare anyone, stand up and tell us that we do not have the right? We have the natural right to heal ourselves, and we always have. And cannabis, if you look at the history of this plant, man's oldest known and safest medication, outlawed. Well, outlawed by who? And for what reason?
And you make a very good point. When we have stories like, many stories, but stories like Shauna Banda, who suffers from Crohn's disease, who now faces up to 30 years in prison because she used medical cannabis in a state that had not legalized it yet. She says that the medical marijuana saved her life. And it basically made her feel like a new person again. And we have veterans who suffer from PTSD who are committing suicide at 22 per day. Instead, they're prescribed a long list of neurotoxic and addictive prescription antidepressants. And other advocates are even calling, having access to these medicines as a human right now. What needs to be done to reform these cannabis laws across the United States?
These laws worldwide need to be repealed in every country. We all know that, all of these laws and regulations and acts, they were all put in place with the use of corruption. There's not a shred of truth in it. So why are we following these absurd laws? And there are many outfits out there, like Normal, who pretend to be, trying to get cannabis legalized. Well, Normal is made up, basically it's run by lawyers. But yet all these legal eagles, who've been fighting for this cause for 40 years now, are unable to get rid of a law which in reality does not even exist. So I don't really think they've been trying too hard, but they've been making a lot of money pretending they are. I just look at this, what goes on in the cannabis world. For the most part, it's just nothing but frauds. You know, the drug dealers don't want to see this legalized because the price will go down. The government doesn't want to see this made legal because that'll expose the real truth about how they've been representing the people. The mega rich, they don't want it exposed because, you know, there it is right in front of us. Who caused this? They did. You know, I mean, I think it's just about time the human race grew up and started looking at things, you know, for what they really are. You know, we've all been misled and we've been simply scammed. Now, here's a natural medicine that we can all grow and produce ourselves. Now, I'm not saying we don't need doctors. I mean, if you have an injury, a broken leg, a car accident, then you need someone to help put you back together. That end of medicine is okay. But as far as the other end of medicine, you know, the pill pushers and the oncologists, they're nothing but frauds. So, I really think that it's time for the public to stand up for their natural right, you know, to grow and use this plant freely with no interference from the government in any way.
And let's say that, you know, prohibition of hemp, you know, were to be abolished. Would this medicine be able to be produced in a much more safer manner than the homemade method, which you talk about a lot on your website and in your videos? And how would the wide availability of such a medicine, you know, affect the price and access to medicine for low-income people?
Well, you know, I mean, I honestly, you know, I'm almost ashamed of the way I had to show the public how to create this medicine themselves. I mean, I used to use distilling equipment to evaporate the solvent off and collect it and then reuse it. You could sit there and smoke a cigarette right beside it. There was no fumes and no danger. But the trouble is, most people don't know how to run a still properly, and they don't understand this process, and it's really not that complicated, but most people don't have this knowledge. So I needed a simple way that I could show people how they could do it at home, you know, using everyday household items, basically. So that's the reason I showed the public how to use the rice cooker and everything. And it is a very safe way of doing this if you simply follow the safety instructions. Right. So, you know, that simple method now has saved a great number of lives all across this planet. So, I feel no shame in bringing it to the public in that way. But in truth, if you're going to produce this on a large scale, then there are much safer and better ways to do it, and I know many myself. So, but, you know, what I'm fighting for basically is just everyone's right to have the freedom to grow and produce their own medicine if they so choose. But for those who are not in a position to do this, then definitely we need organizations or companies that will produce high quality oil at a decent cost and, you know, and provide it to the people. So I think what we need right now more than anything else is some standards and quality control that we can follow. Because at present, right now in the U.S., it's just a madhouse. They're running off in all directions, making all kinds of claims. Everybody and their dog is producing the rich Simpson oil. Now, I mean, I only wish that were true, but, you know, I get complaints from people every day who purchase oil from others, and in many cases, they find that these extracts have little or no healing values at all. So people are using my name to scam the public, and this upsets me a great deal, but, I mean, I simply do not have the funding, you know, to hire lawyers to chase these idiots around and and bring a halt to their activities. But but every time I do an interview like this, I mean, I always tell the public I have no connection with these people, so for God's sakes, think twice before you send them your hard-earned money, because there's a good chance what you receive will have little value.
Right. I mean, you make a very interesting point. I mean, you mentioned the scammers that have targeted you. But what about, you know, the bigger picture? How can cannabis be exploited, you know, by the big pharmaceutical industries or the agribusiness if made legal?
Well, I mean, the big picture in this is what I've always stated is if governments were any damn good, they would have giant government farms and production facilities, and they would be growing and producing this medicine and making it available to their own people on a donation basis. And that could be done because cannabis extracts are, in reality, if there's no laws preventing us from doing so, they're very cheap to produce. You know, I've always told the public, you have to imagine like a field, 100 acres of corn. And then right next to it, an empty field with another 100 acres. Well, plant that empty field in hemp. Now, what's a pound of corn worth? But so the way I look at it, since hemp is a farm crop, you should be able to buy a kilo of high-grade medicinal bud for $10. And we could do that, if they would just get out of our way and let us proceed with this properly. It's like I said, it's the laws that they put in place that have caused, this black market and has caused the price of cannabis to go right through the roof. It's all caused by our governments, for God's sakes. It's to me, it's just as plain as the nose in your face. And I hope people out there, will come to do a little research themselves, and they'll find out that everything I'm telling them is the absolute truth.
Well, thank you, Rick Simpson, for joining me today. That was definitely an interesting conversation, and I hope that more people will, look a little bit further and deeper and question more about these laws that are being passed. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, dear.